Hello and welcome to my occasional videos whenever there's an issue I think that's of burning interest to me and possibly to others, so that I can record something. And I thought I'd pick on a current topic: two-tier policing. So first of all, I'd like to define it, and then secondly, I go on to give my evidence for the fact that it's not a new phenomenon and it's been well known within the legal system for a long time. There was a Home Office report in 2003 which clearly identified the presence of two-tier policing, and I'll go into that in more detail in a moment. And the fact is, many issues like this, which are basic discrimination issues, are so endemic now, institutionalized in the British system, that people take it for granted now and don't even see it as a problem, or even defend it and say, no, there's no discrimination, everyone is treated the same. So what do we mean by two-tier policing? Well, in an ideal world, which we don't live in, then everyone should be treated the same by the government, by the police, by the system. And what that means is that in a particular situation, we should all be treated exactly the same. And in a criminal situation, what that would mean is same punishment for the same crime, regardless of age, gender, nationality, ethnicity, religion, and so on. And it's just not true. That doesn't happen. And I'll go on to explain what I mean. So two-tier policing is currently in the news because of the differential treatment of the Muslim protesters and the anti-Muslim protesters. And the issue is, do different issues get treated differently by the police? And my experience of that is, yes, they do. You know, protests, for example, by Just Oil, climate change activists and so on, which the government supports, are not treated as harshly, for example, as men's rights activists who the government opposes. And so, for example, I remember helping one of my colleagues who was campaigning for men's rights and equality for men, and he was protesting in the street outside Parliament for a total of less than 3 minutes, and he was prosecuted on his own for obstructing the traffic, and he received a criminal punishment, a fine for that, which we appealed, and we lost the appeal. And I tried to argue that this was minimal, this was trivial, and that it should be dismissed as being so infinitesimal that it didn't matter. And the judge ruled no, even the most tiniest of obstructions should be punished. And this is obviously nonsense, given the thousands and thousands of people that protest and block loads of roads and glue themselves to the airport runways and receive no punishment whatsoever. So it depends on the type of protest as to how the judges treat individual protesters. But let's look back at the history, and just to fill in, I qualified as a lawyer in 2008, and I worked for Citizens Advice Bureau in the benefit sector, as well as being self-employed, helping people primarily in family law, but also housing. And so two-tier policing exists in all these areas. For example, in housing, the judges favour the tenants over the landlords. I was representing tenants in court, and I had an over 99% success rate in keeping the tenants in the house. Now, you could say I'm a really, really good lawyer, and I would be very happy to accept that praise. But the reality is the judges, and one of them even said it, look, I sit here all day trying to find reasons to keep tenants in their houses. Give me something to work with. And my job as a lawyer acting for tenants was exactly to do that. So it's quite clear the law favours tenants, not landlords. That's two-tier legal system. Okay, and in family law, I have that experience right from day one, and the discrimination there is in favour of women over men. Over 90% of primary carers are female, and after family separation or divorce, overwhelmingly the child or children go to live with the mother. This becomes de facto primary care. And then when you go to court as a man after separation, when you're not living with the children, the judge is just going to discriminate against you. It's almost impossible for a man in that system to get custody switch, regardless how much money he's got, how good he is as a parent. None of these things matter. The basic judge prejudice is in favour of women. It's almost impossible, I did do it occasionally, almost impossible to reverse custody because of the two-tier system, women are considered to be better parents than men, fundamentally. And so it's almost impossible to overturn that.
What about Britney Spears?
Yeah, and when famous people get involved in the legal system, we get to see a lot more about what's going on. Britney Spears, for example, denied being a drug user, and then she was spotted coming out of a drug clinic, rehabilitation clinic, by one of the paparazzi. And so as a result, she either lost custody or ended up with 50-50. You have to be an incredibly bad parent as a mother, and for the father to be able to prove it in order to have any chance at all of even getting 50-50 or reversing custody. That's an uphill battle. It should be based on what's best for the child, who's got the availability, the love, the experience, the knowledge, and so on, not based on gender. So that's intrinsic to the family legal system. I also got involved in criminal law when I was training to be a lawyer between 2006 and 2008. And I did a number of cases, and it was blindingly obvious that discrimination, again, was against men in favor of women. And when I looked at this 2003 study on the Home Office, it actually analysed tens of thousands of cases, right from stop and search, through arrest, through charge, and then through the legal system to conviction, and it broke them down by age, gender, and ethnicity. I'll focus just on the last two for simplicity, because those were the two I was particularly interested in. Now, one of the facts within the legal system is that black people commit more crime than white people, that men commit more crime than women. That's obvious. But it's not the full story. Now, the thing is that what crimes do women commit most? Shoplifting and prostitution. Now, shoplifting particularly has been massively downgraded. And so if you own a shop and somebody is shoplifting, the police won't even come out now. It's not treated seriously because, I would argue, it's mainly women who commit it. That's two-tier policing. Crimes that men commit are treated more seriously than crimes that women commit. Primarily. Prostitution, for example, it used to be the case that it was a criminal offence for a woman to solicit a man on the street for the purpose of prostitution, and many women got prosecuted for that. In order to reduce the number of women in the criminal justice system, this argument has been reversed. Any man who now approaches a woman and offers her money for sex, even though she's obviously offering it in that circumstance, will be prosecuted for asking for sex for money. And so the customers get prosecuted, not the supplier. Contrast that with the drug situation, where the users are not prosecuted as heavily as the suppliers of drugs. But in prostitution, it's the other way around, because it's women primarily who are offering sex and men primarily who are the customers. And so because of the two-tier policing, the men are the ones who have to be punished, not the women offering sex. And so when you look at all areas of the criminal justice system, you see throughout this discrimination. So have a look at the report. You can see more recent reports will show the same. What you've got to look at is the numbers. And so you look at the numbers and the breakdown. Firstly, stop and search. And so you will see that, in fact, there are more black people who are stopped, or minority people who are stopped, than white people. Now, the threshold for stopping can be seen by what happens after they stop them. And so the numbers, the number of people having been stopped who were then arrested and taken to the police station is a big difference in percentages. And so the percentage of black people stopped is lower, but the percentage of people charged is higher than that for white people. So what that means, and it's the same for women and men, and what that means is the threshold for stopping a black person is much, much higher than that for a white person. And the threshold for stopping a woman is much, much higher. And the reason is that because of the two-tier policing system. And the police don't want to be accused of being racist. They don't want to be accused of being sexist against women. And so they bend over backwards to avoid stopping and searching black people and avoid stopping and searching women. And even though black people primarily are much more likely to be doing something which warrants stopping and searching, and that's shown in the higher arrest figures for black people, the police bend over backwards not to do this. But having arrested them, they take them to the police station and they try and charge them. And again, the numbers change because a white person is much more likely to be charged and a man is much more likely to be charged than a woman, even when they get to the police station. And then when it comes to convictions, you can see clearly the punishments for men are much more severe than that for women. The punishment for white people is much more severe than for black or minority ethnic people. And the overall conclusion from the report was that the best indicator of outcome was gender. And that is clear from the figures. And, you know, there's a lot of arguments against overcrowding of prisons, and we could look at the differential way in which men and women are treated in prison. That's another story. But the fact is, there are something like 70,000 men in prison and there are only 4,000 women. Given that men and women commit more or less the same number of crimes, you have to be clear that the differential in treatment is blindingly obvious between the two. And
you mean the data in UK? 4,000 women in prison and 70,000 men?
Yes, in the UK prisons. And the prison capacity is massively overcrowded. And there was a recent attempt by the new Labour government to release people early, and it resulted in way more women as a percentage being released than men. Further discrimination against men in the criminal justice system. You know, it was calculated that if men and women received the same punishment for the same crime, there would only be 15,000 men in prison instead of 70,000 men. That shows the massive overpunishment for men for the same crime. Men receive a much harsher sentence than women for the same crime. And if the woman goes to prison, the man, if they both go to prison, if the crime is serious enough, the man will get a much longer sentence than the woman. But generally speaking, women don't go to prison. They're given community sentences, but men do go to prison for the same crime, same severity of crime. And when you look at the community sentences for women, that's also two-tier. Women get punished by being required to work in a charity shop. Men have to do hard labor, digging ditches and so on. That is hardly equality of treatment of punishment, let alone equality of sentencing. And when it comes to the gender, the nationality and ethnicity breakdown, the report concluded, and it's quite clear that white people are disproportionately punished over minority and ethnic people. But the numbers show there are more black and minority ethnics in prison and being punished through the criminal justice system than white people. But as a percentage of people that break the law, it's much, much lower. The two-tier policing system is blindingly obvious if you look at the figures. White people, particularly men, are punished far more severely than women and minority ethnic people. And the current protests going on the street, you have to make your own minds up about the selective reporting of all the mainstream media. So you can come to your own conclusions about what's going on out there. But the basic principle of two-tier policing is absolutely institutionalized throughout the legal and criminal justice system. Every lawyer who deals with it knows exactly what's going on. They all know it. They all condone it. They all support it. That's why they deny it. It's fundamental and intrinsic, and it's completely wrong. I believe everyone should receive the same punishment for the same crime. Don't you?
Okay, about all those statistics, are they easy to find? Because what you're talking about is different than my knowledge of the world. So can we put all those links down below on our subscription box or something?
Yeah, I'll try and find the link to the 2003 report, but the Home Office does a report every year, but not all of them go into such great detail over age, gender, nationality of criminals. But yeah, you can look at any of the reports. You go on the Home Office website and search for it. The information's all there. I mean, the other thing you can look at, if you look at the sentencing guidelines, which is also on the internet, There are a number of factors which exacerbate, which make a sentence worse, and another which mitigate, which make a sentence less serious. And you'll see that they disproportionately favour women on the mitigation side, and so the women can claim mitigation on many more factors. And for example, being a primary carer for a child is a mitigating factor, but only for women, not for men. And even though many of these women are in prison for child abuse and so on, the fact that they are primary carers is damaging and dangerous. And some women even get to have their children in prison with them, and that's further two-tier policing. You know, men can't have children in prison with them. That's further anti-male discrimination, of course. It just goes on. But yeah, the Home Office website, the information's all there. They do an annual report. I particularly got involved with the 2003 one because that was the one that came up when I was doing my project during my legal course at law school. And so that's the one I refer to show that this institutionalized anti-male discrimination was well known even 20 years ago. But I think it's been endemic throughout history. You know, how many women have ever got hung, for example, under the capital punishment system? Almost none. And so on. You know, it's just intrinsic and institutionalized for a long, long time. Go and check the report. Yeah, if I can find the link, look for it below. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to your comments, assuming we don't get banned for saying the obvious truth. Thank you. Bye-bye.